Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the part of the world that you're in. You are listening to another episode of Voices of Video, and I am super excited. I'm here with my friend Jason Thibeault. So, welcome, Jason.
Hey, Mark. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hey, yeah. So yeah, they're all saying, "Hey, we're doing well. We're here to we're here to listen to you, Jason." So, I was reflecting. You and I have known each other for a number of years now, going back to I think we were saying Limelight
Yep.
when you were running strategic marketing, and I always admired. I can remember picking your brain. You guys were just cranking out the best content. Technical. It was in depth. It answered real questions. It wasn't the fluffy marketing stuff. I think the industry has gotten a lot better today, but boy, 15 years ago or 12 years ago, it was pretty sad.
there's
So
still there's still a lot of this revolutionizing, transforming, evolutionary, changing the world.
transforming 18 reasons why I call it the 18 reasons why marketing. If I see it's an automatic delete,
Yeah,
and
100%.
and
Yes.
like when I see 7 reasons or 7 factors, it's
Bye
like
bye.
yeah, forget it. No, I love it. I love it. You and I are both marketers, but we also are technical. And so, of course, you took over the Streaming Video Alliance, which you'll get to tell the story about SVA to SVTA
Yeah.
uh, a number of years ago now. I'll let you tell the story, but seriously, welcome to the show, and
Thank you.
we're going to have a great discussion. So, yeah, why don't we start there? For those that don't know who you are and are saying streaming video tech, what? Who are these people?
Yeah, no. I mean, the SVA at the time was the Streaming Video Alliance. Started in 2014 with, I want to say, 17 member companies.
Yeah.
And the impetus was really, Alon Mayor from Quill. I think he got this idea of like, hey, we were in this transition of transparent caching, and but we knew operator networks needed caches at the edge. So he, I think, kind of came up with this brainstorm idea of like, why can't we democratize caching, make it an open standard?
Yeah.
And so he went and sat on people's doorsteps and knocked on doors and got people interested. And the SVA was created. And so originally the impetus was around sort of a place to develop this idea of standardized, democratized caching infrastructure. But obviously there were other working groups even at the time. There was
Mhm.
some security stuff and some geo stuff and some other networking and transport stuff. It wasn't just open caching, but largely it was open caching.
That was the focus. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they realized a couple of years in that that in order for the SVA to really grow, they needed to get somebody neutral in. And so at the time, Limelight was a board member, and Joe DiPaolo at the time was on the board. And he's like, "Hey, I know this guy at Limelight; he would be perfect." And from there to here, that's what I've been doing. I came in to lead the organization. We added a T to the name a couple of years ago in order to make people aware that we were not touching on business issues. We're talking about monetization. We're talking about
Yeah.
business models,
Yeah.
really addressing streaming tech. And obviously, the organization has grown considerably. I think we're now close to around 130 member companies.
Amazing.
Most of the streaming who's who, the companies that really have an impact in the industry are participating. Just
Yeah.
this year alone, we published 23 documents and 23 new projects started.
Wow.
We added 2 new working groups
Yeah.
this past month. One for encoding and packaging, so to capture best practices, because we have all this stuff like context-aware encoding, and it's great for specific use cases, but everyone's kind of doing it their own way, and so it's like, why don't we share this information with everybody?
Yeah.
That's what we are, right? So we are what would normally be called a standards definitions organization, an SDO. We're very much like IETF or CTA Wave or W3C or SCUDY or SMPTE. We have working groups, and everybody meets and they decide on what to work on, and then they create some deliverable, whether that's a document, a spec, a best practices, or even software code, and then we give it away, right? But we don't do standards, and the reason for that is the streaming video industry is super moving fast. Yeah, best way to put it. Standards take about a
Great
year.
way to put it. And very political, by the way. Very politically correct statement there, Jason.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just moving very quickly, and by the
Yeah.
time you standardize something, people would be like, we're not doing it that way anymore. Like we figured out a better way. And so we stick with things that people can use right now, like either specs or guidelines or best practices or again software code. And the organization, is really really expanded. Our mission has grown a bit. We now have a university. We have public repo where you don't have to be a member to participate. Again, all these projects. We just launched our first industry group for streaming sports called the Streaming Sports Council, and that's
Amazing.
to capture the technical challenges. It's not to solve them. It's just to say, like, what are the technical challenges for delivering, high quality live sports events at scale? And, we'll feed our working groups with those challenges to potentially solve them with solutions, or we'll feed other organizations. We'll feed industry events like conferences like Sports Pro and SVG, so that they have technical topics that are germane to the sporting industry rather than just trying to guess. It's like, no. These were surfaced by people actually in the industry.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Doing
so
the
that's
work.
yes, exactly. And so that's where
Yeah.
we're at now. I mean, it's again we're continuing to grow, continuing to try to do things. This year we merged with Dash IF. So anybody in the industry probably knows that there's a lot of associations. And if you want to participate in them, you're paying membership fees for different ones, and it's a pain. And so Dash IF recognized, like, we really want this work to continue. We're at a point where, we're continuing to iterate on the Dash spec, but we're also maintaining the Dash.js player base and, some other things. And it's like, we need to get someplace where this integrates well. And, there was either us or DVB. They were talking to both of us, and they selected SVTA because we were a little less bureaucratic. We wanted to kind of let them do what they were doing. And so this year, it's been great. We have a Dash IF working group now. It's kind of the same as it was as a separate organization, but now you just join the SVTA and you get to access both the SVTA work and the Dash IF work, and that's
great.
worked out really well. And we'll integrate a little bit better next year. There's some duplicative functions underneath Dash IF that would probably be better served by being part of a larger SVTA working group. But that's the story of the SVTA. Where I said we're doing really really well. Fantastic year from a growth and membership perspective, and especially projects and work output. It's been amazing. All those volunteers, they're absolutely fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, do you have to be a member to be able to access all this wonderful documentation, or is it, freely published on the
It's
website? How does
freely
somebody?
published. Yep,
Okay.
that's really sort of what we're trying to do. It's trying to improve interoperability in the industry, and you can't do it by gatekeeping your content.
Yeah.
You can't put it on a
Yeah.
paywall. So
Yeah.
everything that gets ratified by the membership, so it goes through a ratification process, we publish openly on the website.
Yeah.
And then again, everything that's not ratified yet, that is members only. So members get to see
Yeah.
drafts,
Sure.
they get to work on drafts. And again, like our software, we have a pretty large repo base that the members are working on, but there's one that's a public repo. That's the Common Media Library, which is an attempt to solve some of the player code base fragmentation. And it allows, we allow anybody to come and participate. They just have to join the repo, agree to the DCO, and and then there they go. And it's
Amazing.
managed by somebody at Paramount, Casey. And so people say, like, hey, I really want to, I want to be a committer. Like I want to play that role. Then they just reach out to Casey, and they work it out. And so it's a really really cool project that we were allowed or enabled to make happen this past year as a public repo, which is super exciting for me. We've got lots more coming. So there's 2025 is going to be a lot of software.
Yeah, amazing. And I just want to make sure that for those who weren't that familiar with the mission of the SVTA and what exactly you guys do, I'm gonna paraphrase. So if I get it wrong, or if you want to put an exclamation mark behind anything, feel free to jump in. But what is so special and unique and I think valuable, in my view, to the SVTA compared to all of the other different bodies, and every group performs its own functions. So, it's not that, but what's very special is that the industry right now, I would argue always, is clamoring for like best practices. Dare I even say like SOPs,
Oh no,
which
no,
is
100%.
goes way back. But I mean, this is, Jason, you get to work with all these 130 plus member companies. You've been in the industry a long time. I've been around a long time, and you know, um, yes, there's amazing people doing work in the largest streaming platform companies in the world, all the way down to the smallest. But even if you're in the largest and you've got this massive team, and everybody's a true expert in their respective areas, you can't know everything. you
Correct.
know and I'm always, I don't say surprised, because it stands to reason that I'll engage with somebody from some major well-known platform and find out, wow, they're looking for answers in some cases, just like a much smaller company is.
Yep.
And again, not because, these people don't, don't, quote unquote, it drives me nuts when I read these comments on LinkedIn that sort of insinuate that company X or company Y doesn't know what they're doing. It's like, anyway, we could go down a whole nother rabbit trail on that one. But I think the SVTA is a incredibly valuable resource that more of the industry should avail themselves to. So,
No,
that's my,
absolutely. I mean, we sit in the middle of the industry, right? We cover the streaming workflow, which is
yeah,
basically once content hits origin,
yeah,
everything from origin to playback and analytics. That's all what we cover.
yeah.
And, we are a forum for collaboration. Our working groups are all bottoms up. They decide on the
Mm-hmm.
projects they want to work on. So
Mm-hmm.
anybody can come in and raise their hand and say, hey, I've got this problem. Like we saw this, and you'd be surprised. 10 people in the room, I'd be like, oh, yeah, oh my God, we had that problem too. Hey, should we try to solve this with some best
Yeah,
practices or some
yeah,
guidelines?
yeah,
We
yeah.
even launched a streaming video operations group, which is
Mm,
focused on operations. Like, so Mark Ison at ITV he was
yeah,
like, hey, can I get a place where we can just talk about operations and operating streaming platforms and like experiences with vendor
yeah,
technology and
yeah,
can we improve? So yes, what we want to be is a place in the middle where people can come and work together with their colleagues across companies, so even alongside competitors, to try
yeah,
to solve the interoperability issues that make the streaming tech stack kind of messy.
yeah.
It's not like TV. It's not like broadcast. It's not based on standards. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to hot swap stuff when you want to
Mm-hmm.
switch tech. And so here's a chance to come to an organization and work with people to try to fix that problem.
Yeah, yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, great. Well, the title of today's discussion is exploring the present and the future of streaming technology. so, Jason, I know you brought your crystal ball for the future, uh, but before we crack out the crystal ball, we bring out the crystal ball. Let's talk about the present. And we've got, by the way, I want to put a nice shout out to everyone who registered in advance for this session and who submitted questions. We got some really good
Some good
questions,
questions. Yep.
and yeah, and we got a few more than we usually receive. So thank you very much. If anybody is watching live right now, you can go into whichever platform you're on and submit questions, and we'll do our very best to get to it. So get to them. Um, but Jason, why don't we just jump in, and I'll let you kind of pick the where we are today. There's all kinds of trends. What comes to mind, when I think about this is you can't trip into the front door of NAB or IBC or you know
Yeah,
Mile High
exactly.
Video, or I mean, whatever, and name the conference and name the trade show, and not see the words plastered everywhere: ultra low latency, low latency. Mock, WebRTC.
Generative AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the list goes on and on and on and on, fast, and all this stuff, right? And we're laughing and sort of poking fun, not because any of those technologies or technology references or capability references are funny and not useful and valuable, but but I think we also can acknowledge that there's a lot of words being plastered on walls,
Oh yeah.
and not too much following behind. So what is the state of all those things?
Oh my. Yes. Woo.
Yeah. All right. There we go.
I mean,
And you have 11 minutes to answer that question. So go.
I'll continue to beat the drum that the streaming video tech stack's a mess.
Yeah.
It's gotten better. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. So there are definitely and have been improvements, but it relies on technology that's not necessarily just in the industry, right? So because it's software based, the tech stack is software based. There's lots of changes within the way that we develop web-based software and middleware and things like that, that are impacting how we're building software for the tech stack. So it's messy. We're trying to fix that. So when we look at technologies like Mock and or Quick, so for example, our networking and transport group has been doing lab testing of comparing Quick versus TCP for video delivery under different circumstances and in different network conditions. So different network control algorithms, different compression algorithms, and Quick is not the silver bullet. Like, fancy that. There's no silver bullet. We always seem to be looking for one, but there's not. So when we look at the state of things today, I think the true drivers of priorities are things like reliability, resilience, scalability. Oh, wait a minute. It's the same things that we talk about with broadcast television. Yeah, that's because, I remember this one thing back from my days at Limelight. BBC was, we were talking about BBC, and BBC was like, listen, we don't care about all the bells and whistles, but it just has to work. So somebody can sit down, press the play button like they do today on the couch, and press the remote control on button. Just has to play, and has to play flawlessly. And let's get rid of the buffering and the jittering and all of this other stuff. But obviously, streaming is different. It's going over a best effort network.
That's right.
It's not a self-contained network, and so there's lots of issues that you have to contend with. You don't have to contend with when you're literally delivering signal. And that kind of sums up where we are today, right? We are struggling and trying to figure out how do we make this scalable, and so that involves things like edge resources. But how do you host edge resources in the best possible manner for things like live streaming? We just spun up an edge group to start asking and dealing with those questions. There are so many elements and components of the delivery chain that have not been addressed yet. And then we have to look at things like the state of content delivery networks. How are they going to fit in this, ecosystem that is starting to see more operator networks like Comcast and Verizon and Orange and Telefonica and all these people launching their own CDNs in order to better deliver to their end users. And gosh, that makes a whole lot of sense. If I'm Disney, why do I want a relationship with a bunch of third-party networks when I can just go straight to the eyeball networks? So we're seeing some of the technology like open caching kind of shape around these conversations that are happening at the business side. And that's the funny thing. All these words that we talk about, like fast and all this stuff, the media loves to jump on words that reflect how they think people are watching or experiencing something different. But they don't pay attention to the technology underneath. Fast is nothing new. Fast is zero new.
Exactly.
We were doing pseudo live, which is what fast is. We were doing pseudo live 15 years ago. It's not anything truly new and exciting. It's just a different way to package stuff. And so we see all these words, and it's just like, is that really reflective of what's happening underneath, which is where all the hard work is being done? All of those smart engineers and the smart software developers and architects all across these amazing companies, from the big guys like Netflix and Apple and Amazon and Google, all the way down to the startups. They're trying to fix or build the better technology underneath all of those cool words. And I want to talk about mock for a second. In particular, mock is
Please
really
do.
yeah.
Please do.
So that's a weird story, right? So Google, comes up with this idea of quick based on HTTP3. Let's use this, and then they're like, well, you know what? This would probably be best if we stuck this in the industry, and so they give it to IETF, and it becomes IETF quick because they start working on it, but Google's like, it's not happening fast enough. Like we're using this and we need these features, and so then it became Google Quick, and they have since aligned, which is great. There's just one Quick now. But then Quick was not really designed to deliver video. And so along comes this idea of media over Quick. So how do we tune, optimize, and build features in Quick that are specific to media? Like my favorite feature there is a TCP fallback. What happens when video goes to the enterprise and they're blocking UDP? Whoops. We still want people to watch a video, so let's have a fallback mechanism that you can configure for a TCP-based stream. So mock is a good thing, right? So it's an improvement, but Quick and mock are really like they're kind of like the next generation of WebRTC. It's like the WebRTC that WebRTC should have been, because WebRTC was never designed for video.
Exactly. Yeah.
So again, all these things under the hood that that we're trying to do as an industry, whether it's mock or it's context-aware encoding or it's AI, it's what we're trying to really do is ensure a seamless, reliable, resilient, scalable infrastructure. That's what all of this work is intended to do. And there's other work people are doing on viewer experiences and multi-camera and all these cool features and AR and immersive and XR, and that's all great, but that all relies on the stuff under the hood. So I still consider us to be in a building phase. We are there are services that are running, obviously commercial services, and in a lot of ways they're duct tape and bubble gum. And I say that as they are basically will do anything they need to do to make the service operate because they're generating revenue.
That's right.
Not be the best way to do it from a resiliency, reliability, scalability standpoint. But you got to start somewhere and you got to make it work. And so my hat's off to all of these streaming platforms that are making it work. But then our growth and our membership and the projects we're doing and the amount of work that we're doing shows that they all realize there might be a better way to do. There might be a more standardized way to do this. Let's all get together and make that.
I really love that perspective, Jason, because and one of the questions that someone submitted is around Netflix and how they're going to do better on Christmas Day. They have two games on Christmas Day, right? NFL games, hey, I mean, we don't have any insights, and if we did, we couldn't say it anyway. So
there's lots of speculation, right?
There's a ton of speculation, but as I've said very publicly, shortly after the Tyson Jake Paul fight, look, here's the one thing that I do know and that we can all take to the bank. There's a group of incredibly smart people who are incredibly hardworking at Netflix who are doing everything possible to make sure that experience is not replicated. In other words, the less than stellar experience is not replicated on Christmas Day. That we can take to the bank. But the thing that the reason I reference Netflix and this question, the person, is I love your perspective. Is that these large platforms have grown, like you say, there's a little bit of duct tape, sometimes a lot of duct tape under the hood, and baling wire and whatever.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not.
And it's not a bad thing. And it's also, we have to step back and look at, we are now 15 years into a lot of these it's hard to actually like really think about it. Like, a lot of these platforms came out of the ground in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. That makes them like 15 years old, which is
They're
kind
very
of
young.
hard, which is kind of hard to believe. And then you think about the state of, how the system was built then and how it evolved over time. And when you're growing like hockey stick and, and you're just running to just keep up, even if at multiple junctures throughout that period, the engineering team says, you know, gang, like this system needs to be fundamentally rebuilt or re-architected or whatever. Like you literally cannot do it. You can't
So
build the
yes,
plane in flight. Yeah, I mean rebuild the
like,
plane in flight.
and that is a great way to that's a great perspective. And the reason for that is let's go back to Netflix, right? So Netflix
Yeah,
launched an event that they had no idea was even possible to host and deliver, which was a
yeah,
60 million concurrent event.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Blew every record we've ever had completely out of
yeah,
the water. They
yeah.
didn't build the Netflix architecture with that in mind at the beginning because they were delivering VOD. And
Yeah,
so
exactly. And just remember, Jason, it's only like 3 or 4 years ago, and I won't say the senior member of the team's name, although I remember pinning him down. This would have been 2015, 2016, maybe, and saying, is Netflix going to do live? Everybody, Netflix needs to do live. And I mean, he looked at me with so much certainty, just like Reed Hastings when he said Netflix will never have ads, and looked at me and said, Netflix will never do live. We are VOD. We're happy with that business model. It ain't going to happen. I mean, he didn't say the ain't part, but it was that definitive of an answer. And now, hello, you
no, I mean
know, and
absolutely, and
and
what
and
net
guess what? He wasn't wrong at that time. At that time, that 100% was the correct
sure.
and the accurate answer. Our businesses are growing, they're dynamic, they're changing, and our technical needs then,
Well, and
go
that's
with
and
that.
that's the funny thing, right? So again, so people ask the question, what is Netflix doing better for
Yeah,
Christmas game day?
yeah,
The question is like, what did they learn from that
yeah,
experience that we as an
yeah,
industry don't know? And they learned a
yeah,
lot. They learned
yeah, yeah,
again delivering a live event to 60 million people. And it's funny. So we've been talking to NASA. So NASA
yeah.
is going to stream live from the moon in 2027. Hello,
Amazing.
like
Yeah,
what is that? That's a global event that's not behind a paywall. Can we
yeah,
say 100 million people?
yeah, yeah.
50?
Really.
Like
Yeah,
Netflix is so Netflix is such a pioneer. They have taught us so much about streaming
yeah,
at scale,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
are teaching us even now. They
yeah,
basically said, "Hey, we're going to take a chance on this event." They have no idea what it's going to be like. It's going to be 30
yeah,
million, maybe 20 million people will watch it.
yeah,
Ha! There's 60 million. Holy
yeah,
crap! And
yeah,
there's so much in the way. Like there's ISP interconnects, there's teleport facilities and transits and ISPs and home bandwidth, all this stuff that has
yeah.
no bearing on delivering a signal to a cable box,
Exactly.
to a television
Exactly.
set. And so
Yeah.
they've learned so much. I'm actually really eager because they've been very good in their tech blogs to come out and
Yeah.
talk about things that hopefully someday they will talk about, like, hey, here's what happened and here's what we
Yeah.
learned. And maybe
Yeah.
that'll be, honestly, maybe that'll be post NFL Christmas Day. If Christmas Day
Could
goes
be.
off without a hitch, they'll be like, we learned,
Yeah. Yeah.
implemented, we
Yeah.
optimized. Look, we did
Yeah.
so much better. Now let's talk about what happened
Yeah.
and what we changed. And so that's
Yeah.
that's what the SVTA is about, sharing information. We
Yeah.
cannot get better as an industry unless we share. And Netflix has
Yeah.
been so good about sharing. They recently signed their membership agreement, so they're very eager
Oh,
to start
amazing. Awesome.
in
Awesome.
the
Well,
SVTA.
that's
Yeah,
great.
and so it's especially when we have groups like Encoding and Packaging where they have a real
Yeah.
passion, and are
Yeah.
really looking
Yeah.
to improve, how they deliver content from an encoding perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm very excited and very appreciative of companies like Netflix who are willing, to be honest, they're willing to take the risk
Yeah.
for the
For
rest
sure.
of us to improve and do better.
Yeah. 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 For sure. It's great. Okay. Well, if anyone wonders where Jason and I stand on this whole, uh,
Yeah,
discussion
figure that one
debate,
out.
you can see. Yeah. 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 It's pretty clear. This is a great discussion. Now, another question that came in, and it dawned on me. You talked about open caching. I would not assume that everyone knows what that is. So
Oh,
the
that's fair.
question that came in is, what's the state of open caching? So why don't you first give an explanation, a definition, talk about open caching, and then what's the state? Where's it being
Yeah,
used, adopted? What's happening?
yeah. The best way to look at open caching it's an overlay network. So the idea is caches can be open caching enabled. So it's a suite of API specifications. It's not a new reverse proxy. It's not a new Nginx or Varnish. It's a way to enable existing caches to be viewed as a single footprint. So, for example, like let's say that Comcast CDN was open caching enabled. So they've implemented the specs in their existing caches so that the APIs can be used to communicate with them. So upstream and downstream CDN communication. Let's say that Akamai, no, not Akamai. Let's say that Edgio did that. Let's say that somebody else, some other company, Fastly did whatever. You've got places that are doing caches, and the content owners, right? We all know the streaming operators have caches, right? They all have,
of course.
they all have their own content delivery networks in order to shield origins. So it's kind of like a origin shield.
Exactly.
All of those caches are open caching enabled. Then the content operator, when they're delivering content, can see an entire footprint and control the delivery of content through those open caching enabled caches, which would mean things like they could purge simultaneously from multiple delivery networks. So that's what really open caching is all about. It's all about creating an overlay network on a heterogeneous delivery architecture. And so it's, the biggest probably provider of open caching right now is Quilt. And it's funny. I always say that it's, Quilt, it's like the Red Hat model, right? You can go get the community version. So that would be, you go to SVTA, you get the specs, you build out what you want to build out.
You build it yourself.
You build it yourself, and your support is only the community. Or you could do enterprise Red Hat, where you're paying a fee and having somebody manage it for you. And there's some special extra secret sauce features that are not available in the community version. So it's the same thing with Nginx, same thing with Varnish. That's kind of what Quilt is doing. So Quilt, operator networks, operators are saying, we need caches at the edge. It's done. We need caches. Saves us on middle mile backhaul. It's a problem caused by unicast, and we could talk about that forever. But they need caches, and so the operator network is saying, like, hey, we'd like a cache that could serve all sorts of content. It's not specific to a type of content or owned by a specific content operator. And so Quilt is coming in and saying, like, hey, we got a box. You slide it in. We manage it for you. We help you. To be honest, the big thing is about traffic federation is we help you share some of the revenue. So you get your little piece of that delivery revenue, as well, versus CDN, which may terminate on an operator network, and the operator is responsible at no revenue generation for backhauling that content through their network and down to their subscriber. So, so open caching is really about democratized caching. It's an overlay network that simplifies and organizes and makes it easier to manage heterogeneous delivery networks. And it's all API driven. So you don't have to build something new. You can, hopefully in the future, we'll have open caching plugins for things like Nginx and Varnish, and you can just enable a plugin and
and you get it. You get it. What is what's the corollary to open caching and what Netflix built with Open Connect?
Well, so there's no correlation, right? So Open Connect is Netflix's proprietary CDN caching box that they put into specific operator networks. And it's obvious why, right? It's obvious why an operator would want this box. Netflix accounts for like 30% of internet traffic during peak times.
Yeah, exactly.
I want that content cached. I don't want to backhaul it. And so, I don't know, where this goes in the future. I mean, what they've built with Open Connect is really fantastic. They've really built a great box,
and they've got a massive footprint now.
Footprint.
The numbers that are out there. I've gotten a little bit of exposure to maybe what the real numbers are, and people would just be, I think, jaw dropped.
Well, look, again, look at Akamai's footprint, their caching footprint. They also embed in operator networks, which is the obviously good strategy. And so they have a massive footprint as well, and that helps operator networks. So operators have they have this thing to weigh in their hands: is do I I can only host so many boxes, right? So power and
Yeah,
rack are the premium. Um, do I host an open caching box or
yeah,
two, or do I,
yeah,
can I host that and Akamai and Open Connect? But
yeah.
then what if Disney comes along with their own box? Or what if,
Exactly.
like,
Next thing you know, my racks are like 50, 60% full of other people's,
so this is
caches
very
and
much in
services.
flux. Open
Yeah,
caching is, again, it's not a silver bullet.
yeah,
It is a potential part of an overall delivery strategy, but
yeah,
it relies on a lot of other components and parts and participants that a Netflix doesn't have to worry about, an Akamai doesn't have to
yeah,
worry about. Like, and so there's trade-offs, and that's why you're not getting this everybody rushing to adopt and
yeah,
implement open caching, because
yeah,
this is not an easy decision for an operator
yeah.
to make. Um, and they're going through that process. Again, Quilt provides them an easy way to get that, which is, oh,
Mhm,
I can just put in Quilt boxes. This is fantastic.
mhm,
But
mhm.
again, it's still a trade-off. Do I have the rack space for a lot? Do I want to manage it? Do I want to have the power? Like, I already
Yeah,
got Akamai caches in here, and I've got Open Connect caches in here, and maybe that's good enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We're this is probably another 10 or 15 year journey.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's the answer to the question of the status of open caching. And, again, you said a very important phrase. Open caching is a part of an overall strategy.
Yep.
And, I think there's going to be a couple themes that come out of our discussion today, I know. And, one of them is that there's just no silver bullets. And so, with all due respect to the vendors that we love, and I know I can think of some vendors that I really like and I greatly respect, but they have got to stop talking as if what they have is a silver bullet. you know,
No,
um,
and so yeah, so talk about that again. I want to bring up Akamai again. I mean, they're doing a lot of great stuff. Like, they have a managed CDN product, which is an operator network can say, I want a CDN. I don't want to build it myself. I don't want to manage it myself. I could just go to Akamai and get this, and that solves a whole lot of my problems. There are so many business decisions that affect the technology direction
yeah,
that we pick,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why and so it's just, there are just, again, there are no silver bullets.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, let's transition. We've got 15 minutes or so to talk about the future. And
Yes.
uh,
What's
and
happening?
and and I know that right as we were going live, I think you were pulling up maybe a post from like a year ago.
I
Um,
was.
yeah, like literally a year ago. Almost to the day or the week. Anyway, so how did you do? How did you do with your 24
Not
prediction and
bad.
then
Well,
looking at
that's the funny thing.
25?
So the way I did this, so folks in the tech industry might be familiar with what's called a tech radar. So tech radar's been around
Uh,
for a while, right? And a tech
yeah,
radar divides things up by, sort of these quadrants of techniques, tools, platforms, and then sort of languages and framework. And then everything's in a radial circle, and it's, you either adopt it, trial it, assess it, or hold it. And so I'm still kind of reviewing what I looked at, but the way I sort of approached my predictions back in 2023 for 2024 were around these big technical things, these big technology buckets. So things like, I looked at, what's the state of cloud? What's going to be the state of cloud in general, or what's going to be the state of the edge, or what's going to be the state of serverless functions, or
mm,
AR, XR, VR? Where are we
yeah,
there?
uh,
Ultra low latency streaming, and in some ways, just looking at this sort of, half-heartedly. I was pretty close on a lot of these,
yeah,
because
that's good.
because I was just really talking about, are they going up? Are they coming down?
Yeah,
Are they staying the
yeah,
same?
yeah.
And I have new ones to add. And so I'm going to update my
Cool,
predictions, my
cool.
can I call them predictions, sort of like evaluation of the
Yeah,
technology
yeah,
and
yeah,
industry,
yeah,
for
yeah,
2025. And we'll
yeah,
do another tech radar. We'll adjust the tech radar, but we'll go up and down on
yeah,
some stuff, and we'll
yeah,
add some new things like server guided ad insertion. Oh, that's a new one that popped
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but it's, yeah, I was pretty close on a lot of these, and some may still be like, no, we didn't really go down. We were still
Yeah,
climbing a little bit. People were
yeah,
still talking about it, but but yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, cool, cool, cool. Well, what stands out? What stands out? Let's look at 25, and then not too far in the future, but what is on your radar? Radar, tech radar.
Ah,
No pun intended. For this next year, for this upcoming year, and what do you think we should be paying attention to, investing in, maybe planning to invest in, technology wise?
yeah, I would say from a technology wise perspective, a lot of the emphasis is going to be on edge. So that's again, is how do you scale
Mm,
effectively?
mm,
And then the other emphasis is really going to be on security. We saw that explode in 2024. Holy smokes!
yeah.
And then you have, the CTA wave SVTA Common Access Token standard was published in December.
Mm,
So now we're going to see potentially start to see people starting to implement things like that.
mm,
The I think there's going to be a continued investment in trying to reduce device fragmentation. It's a really 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 big problem. Like
it's a gnarly problem.
if you
Yeah.
talk to these content owners, like if you talk to a Hulu or talk to a Disney, talk to probably even Netflix, they have warehouses of televisions with different versions, models,
Yeah.
OSs, because
Yeah.
you have to physically test these things because those devices, phones, TVs, they go out to different countries as we deprecate them as US consumers.
Yeah.
Those devices are sent to emerging countries, or I mean
Yeah.
emerging nations and developing nations and third world countries, and that becomes their primary device. And so then you're like, oh, okay, if we don't allow that anymore, then we've just cut off
Yeah.
content to those
And
people.
entire countries in some cases,
And in
entire
in
markets.
some
Yeah.
ways that has to be done. There are some
Yeah.
cases where the hardware itself cannot be secured well enough. So
Yeah.
it's like we can't deliver to that box
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of push in that direction. It's funny. I had this sort of bucket of thing called interactivity, and I put
Hmm.
it up or down, and I might say it's going to be down again. I think
Hmm.
we're all as an industry. So this is this other part of the industry, right? So we have the
Hmm.
core technology, which allows us to stream reliably with resiliency and scale. And then you've
Yeah.
got this other part, which is what we'll just call sort of the user experience. How can
Yeah.
I, because it's no longer signal, it's now digital. What can I do with these digital
Yeah.
bits that I couldn't do
Yeah.
before? I can have
Yeah.
multi-camera angle. I can have, I can include in other alternative people talking about like a sporting event.
Hmm.
A guy from TikTok, he's got his own, channel, and I can just click on him. So there are some ways where we're trying to shape the user experience to be more
Yeah.
interesting, especially to different generations. But
Yeah.
interactivity as a whole, shoppable commerce, I would have put
Yeah.
that a negative 25.
I know.
I don't think we're ready for this. I don't necessarily think people are super interested yet. In the
Yeah.
future, maybe, but it's still not at
And
that
yet,
place.
and yet, I want to make an observation specifically about shoppable commerce, because I'm aware of one particular platform that is operating in primarily in Southeast Asia. It has incredible scale, delivering a lot of simultaneous live streams, and doing very well. I mean, and so it's so also. I remind myself and the folks working around me, it seems like every day, like, just because, this trend or this use case is not hot in the US or in North America or in Europe or, some part of the world, does not invalidate it somewhere else in the world, or mean that the usage we're hearing about, is sort of like, yeah, it's this, sort of corner edge case. Like, yeah, a
So
corner edge case with like tens of millions and millions and hundreds of millions of consumers that, guess what, love to watch these influencers live. Basically, it's a QVC channel. I mean, that's what
well, and
you.
I was going to add a
That's what's
caveat.
funny to me. It's like we had
Well, but
this when I was a kid. I watched this on TV. It's
and
like,
that's the thing is there's a differentiator there where um, you know a Netflix video could be watched if it wasn't just specific to the Netflix player. Like if they didn't have a walled garden, they said like, here's our
yeah,
video. You can watch it
yeah,
anywhere. You can
yeah,
literally watch it anywhere. TikTok does not exist. Like TikTok exists within the TikTok platform, for example.
That's right.
And so it's a very specific closed community. Now, do the things that they do with their live video, does that is, in different geographic regions, it may happen faster, it may not happen at all. And so, just, as a whole, sort of interactivity for me is what I'm seeing across streaming video as a whole is not what we had expected it to be. I think people are still in the lean back experience, even if they're just little clips. They're still like, I just want to watch, like, I want like, we talk about second. How many times have we talked about second screen? Like, oh, people have this app, a companion app, to be able to do all this stuff, and are people really doing that? No, they're just on TikTok while they're watching.
Yeah, exactly. No. Here's a funny thing: is absolutely everyone is doing second screen. It's called phone in your hand. Navigating, doing whatever, checking your email,
not really paying attention to video.
Exactly, with Netflix going or whatever, whatever streaming service of choice. But so yes, we're all doing second screen. It's just that this whole thing of, it's going to be connected and it's this extension of the experience and you can learn all about the actor on the screen. Like nobody's doing that.
2025, and again, so use cases, right? Interactivity is probably far more relevant for live sports. AR, VR, XR probably more relevant for live sports or live events. So some of these interactivity things will just be very germane to specific use cases. But again, so I think security in 2025 is going to be a lot of emphasis going to be placed on security technology, and then I think a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on advertising. So we're still the ad tech stack. When we talk about the video tech stack being, kind of messy, the ad tech stack is, I don't know how word to describe it. Catastrophe. Like it's so complex and it's so
fractured and fragmented. And it's okay. So Jason, this leads into a couple questions that came in. What's going to be the hottest topic at NAB 2025? So in 4 months, and what is the role of AI in the future of streaming?
You just answered the question. What's going to be the hottest topic at NAB
2025? That's exactly why I asked those two together. They came in from two different maybe it's the same person. I don't really know, but they're two separate questions. But
let's get it clear. So I've been studying AI for decades. If we go back to the history of AI, we start talking about folks like Minsky and Lanat and MIT and sort of what they were trying to do. And I've sort of been penning a blog post about renaming artificial intelligence to autonomous intelligence, because that's really what we want. We want, like, right now, the chatbot doesn't exist unless I engage with it. It's not doing its own thing and coming up with stuff and having. I don't open the chatbot and it doesn't say to me, "Hey, JT, how's it going, man? Hey, I saw this movie the other day." It's not an actual conversation. It's not autonomous. It doesn't operate on its own. So AI, for me, as we see it now, it's really just clever programming. Large language models and even more appropriately, small language models are fantastic. So the using these to create and using them against natural language processing to create ways that we can interact, fantastic. AI, so generative AI, so like looking forward as to how that might impact the streaming video industry, it will. Like, I really believe it has a place for things like content recommendations. Let's improve content recommendations. It has a place for personalizing clips that you want to see. Like let's say, for example, for a sporting event, or sporting events across a league. Like, I just want the recaps of everything. Like, what would interest me? AI can take care of that. You don't have to have a manual person sitting in front of going like, let's clip this part and clip this part and clip this part. So AI is going to be hot at NAB. 100%. And I think that will probably be one of the big stories. And it does have a role in the streaming video workplace. I think has a role on the edge. I think from an operational perspective, AI, the way we have AI built now, can really do well at predicting where things are going to go wrong and saying like, hey, based on all the data I can analyze in seconds that you as a human can't analyze in an hour, I can tell you this ISP is probably going to have an issue because we've been seeing these key metrics go down. You should deal with it right now. That's where I think AI is really going to be applicable, is in operations.
Yeah, totally agree. And as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about my own perspectives and learnings, I think we need to do a show, an episode on just focus on only the AI conversation, because
totally.
Because we need a whole lot more time, I'd actually love to bring in a little bit of a panel of experts, and so anyway. So that's a public pronouncement that we will put that show together, and not too far in
We
the.
often run before we can walk. So
Yeah, exactly.
let's apply
Yeah,
it right
totally.
now without really understanding like how to use it well. And that's where we're at. We're in the sort of like, let's throw darts at the board and figure out what sticks. Kind of like, oh, wait, there was this other one called blockchain.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's
That's
just
right.
apply it to places and see if it works. It's like, why don't we be more thoughtful
Yeah, for
and
sure.
improve the technology before we put it into practice?
For sure, yeah. So I think we'll wrap up here. This question is actually interesting. Maybe not applicable to all of our listeners, but I think people care about it. The question is, which technologies have the most transformative potential? That right there could be a 30-minute conversation. But the second part of it, I think, is where the meat is, and I'd love for you to comment on this one. The second part of the question is, how do we make sure that patent trolls don't prevent their dissemination? So, in other words, there's a lot of great technologies being developed, but then and codecs are the easiest one, right? Like
100%.
AV1 was going to be kind of our savior in that regard. And for the record, and everybody I think knows from reading my LinkedIn, I'm a massive AV1 fan and very involved in AOM, etc. So, but and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe there's going to be some IP questions around even AV1. So, what's your view on this? Not the AV1, but just the patent issues.
Yeah, I mean, obviously AI, could be really transformative to a lot of parts of the workflow, from encoding to analytics. So there, I'm sure people have already patented a bunch of stuff. Thankfully, there can be a lot of prior art out there, so maybe some of those patents get invalidated. And that's great. Like no patents is probably better for our industry than having patents. But so we live in a patent world. We're gonna have to deal with the trolls. That's hopefully, um, you know, companies will recognize the benefit of having these patents out in the open, and they'll just make them publicly accessible. Here, we're not, anybody
like what Elon did with Tesla, right? All the Tesla patents. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And look, it's worked out okay for Tesla. So.
Oh, I like this last question. This just popped up about
Yeah,
Web3.
yeah. So why don't you answer that? Squeeze that in.
I'm a fan. So I do believe that DPIN and Web3 have a place in media delivery. I think it's really really interesting where this is going. So DPIN, if you don't know, is about basically decentralizing key infrastructure, power, internet, bandwidth, cellular modems. Why not content delivery, right? So how do we improve content delivery by decentralizing it? I think that's where Web3 could really come in, and somebody, we have a startup, a grant member in our organization called Blockcast, and I've been helping them out a little bit. They are proposing to do just that. It's like, how do we get caches in people's homes? Like, how can we help those caches be part of a larger caching pool that other people can deliver content from? So it's really early. It's really interesting, and I think we're going to see some real transformation happening in the way certain aspects of the streaming workflow are handled, whether it's delivery or analytics, or encoding. There are some DPIN companies out there doing encoding or transcoding as a decentralized service. So it's very, very, very interesting, sort of what's happening with Web3 and DPIN and what we might see in the future.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Jason, 100% we're going to have you back and do a follow up because really we could have just kept rolling and I think everybody would stay fully engaged. So
That's a lot of stuff to
um,
talk about. Yeah.
yeah, we do, and but let's wrap it up here. Thank you for coming on. Really
My
appreciated your
pleasure.
perspectives. So, all
My
right,
pleasure. And I want to say thanks to all my member companies, right? So
yeah,
Netflix, Comcast, all these member companies are the ones doing all the work, and they are coming to the table and they're collaborating with each other, and we're trying to build a scalable, resilient, reliable streaming infrastructure. And that can't be done if everyone's doing their own thing in their own little corner and just protecting themselves.
yeah.
So I just want to shout out to all of my member companies. I so thankful that they're participating and what they're helping to
Mhm.
accomplish in this industry. And it's going to be more to come. So lots more to come as we keep pushing forward.
Amazing, amazing. Well, keep up the good work, and for anybody who hasn't been to the SVTA website recently, make sure you go. Easy to find in Google. Just type in Streaming Video Technology Alliance, or
Type in
is it
SVTA.
yeah, svta.com, right? Or is it
.org.
an org?
Yeah, we're an org.
Okay. Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Voices of Video. Thank you for everyone who joined us.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Have a great holiday.
Cheers.